Today, we're going to talk about a sensitive topic. Millions of people all over the United States are finding themselves unemployed or about to be laid off. So right now, we're going to figure out, what do you do when that happens? Where do you even start? Where do you even go? If that sounds interesting to you, or maybe to someone that you know, hang around with me. Okay, so you just found out you're going to be laid off or you're going to be unemployed. What do? First thing, don't panic. I know it's the opposite of what most folks do, but you have to realize you're now in a circumstance where you need to be thinking clearly. Panicking is only going to paralyze you. It's only going to stop you from thinking clearly. Some people huddle up into a ball. Some people just get angry and detach themselves or stop talking to people, or they just get lost in this maze of anger. Truth be told, if you find out you're getting laid off, there's nothing at the moment you can do, but think clearly. This is the most important thing you could ever do. Don't be paralyzed by anger, frustration, or fear. We always want to think about what's the worst case circumstance. Right now, you need the best case. You need to be thinking clearly and on your feet. You need to be able to assess the situation and figure out what the next move is. So the very first thing is, don't panic. So the next thing you're gonna do, you wanna start looking at, what are my resources? Start evaluating, what are my resources? So you're gonna go to your local, state, or federal websites. See what sort of resources are available. The main resource that most people are aware of is going to be filing for unemployment benefits. Of course, each state is completely different with how they handle that, but it is a necessary resource for many people. Let's be honest, most people don't have $1,000 in the bank. Most families don't have that saved. Lots of people are working paycheck to paycheck. So you first have to look at your financial resources. And once again, that varies from state to state. Also, depending on when you may be filing for unemployment, the federal government may have programs coupled with your state programs also. Another thing you definitely want to look at is going to be, see if there's any state ordinances or anything that the state legislature has done. For example, housing, foreclosure. If you start with foreclosure, for example, in the city of Chicago, all foreclosures were stayed. What that means in layman's terms is they were paused. So even courts weren't allowed to receive filings, they weren't able to hear those cases, and they weren't able to enforce any sort of foreclosure cases for a limited time. That may be the case in your state. Another thing you definitely want to look at is possibly if you're a renter. I know in this big city, there's renters everywhere. It's probably half of the city. There's often ordinances or legislative action that's been taken either by your governor or by your local government in order to handle things like evictions. For example, in Chicago, where I practice, evictions are stayed in terms of they're not being enforced, and once again, many times they're not even being able to be filed. So there are state remedies, although they're going to be temporary. They are definitely something for you to consider and take time and research depending on your circumstances. Also, if you own homes or a home, look to see what your local servicer is doing regarding your mortgage. Many of them already, because of COVID and they're used to these heavy impacts, have already started automatically either putting you into some sort of forbearance plan for a certain amount of time or a deferment. Make sure you call them and get the details on your mortgage and see what remedies they have for the time being. Also, once again, details matter. You need to know the difference between a deferment and a forbearance when it comes to your mortgage. One of them, for example, the forbearance, eventually is going to have to be paid back at the end of that stipulated time where they give you a short break or recess on your payments, but it will need to be paid back at some point, probably over time usually. Or they may do a deferment, which in this case, they might put your mortgage payment on the back end of your 30-day loan, where you just start back making payments in general after that time frame has lapsed. So get the details from your mortgage servicer and see what resources they're offering to help alleviate some of this stress. The next thing, all right, so you want to start assessing your finances. Start looking at it from a realistic standpoint of, okay, how much cash do I have? How much credit am I currently using? What are my debts? You want to find a way to intelligently navigate your finances in order to get you until you are now employed next. So that could be a month, it could be 2 months, it could be 6 months. So you need to be smart in how you're using your finances. And also, the number one thing, if it's at all possible, you want to keep your credit in mind. So you want to try your best to pay your bills. If you're blessed enough to have the savings and the resources and the ability to continue to pay your bills without missing them, you certainly want to do that, because missed payments impact your credit score. So if you planned on making a large payment on a credit card, but you're kind of going to be lean on cash, keep your cash, make the minimum payment on that card possibly, just so that you're not missing a payment, but you have cash if you absolutely need it. But once again, you want to figure out the best way to balance it, because you certainly don't want high credit usage, but also you're paying huge interest rates. So it's something you're definitely going to have to take the time, assess what you have, and navigate it intelligently to get you to your next step. Keep in mind, you're in survival mode, but you also have to be intelligently in survival mode regarding your finances to get you to the other side of any sort of unemployment. So now you're ready, you've looked at all of your resources, you've assessed your finances, but now it's time to figure out, how do we get our next job? How do we get some income coming? So first of all, you definitely want to update everything. If you haven't had a resume in 10 years, update your resume with your latest qualifications. Also, use new references. Most people have references that are 10, 20 years old, 5 years old from jobs you've had a long time ago, and you don't even speak to those people anymore. Take the time to reach out to people you worked with, people who know how well you work. Get their phone numbers, their email addresses. Make sure it's okay for them to give you, for you to use them as a reference first. Make sure it's a person that you know is going to speak positively about you and your work level. But certainly update your resume and your references. There's any number of websites that you can find this as a resource, and they can do it far better than I can. But it's certainly your starting point. So most people, when they start doing their job hunt, it's not the most fun thing in the world, let's be honest. So what you definitely want to do is treat it like a job. You really have to get yourself on a schedule where you take it seriously. A lot of people might apply to a couple jobs a day and then they go back to sleep, or they get stressed about other things. Do the best you can to really treat this like a job. Start working on it in the morning if you're a first shift person. Do from 8 to 12, a block of time, and then give yourself a break. Take lunch, hang out with your kids, talk to your wife, however you relax briefly, or however you might just take lunch in general. And then once that time frame is over, get back to it. You always want to set yourself on a schedule, because it'll keep you productive, it'll keep you working, and it'll keep you focused. I can't stress enough how important it is to really take it seriously, because once you're not working, it's easy to fall into this hole of, I have all this time, I can kind of come and go and do as I please or stay up late. You really want to really be focused and hone in on it. I promise you, it will make all the difference in the world.